Boa tarde a todos e todas, sejam bem-vindos e bem-vindas a mais um webinar aqui da Rede EducationUSA. Meu nome é Davi Medeiros, eu sou EducationUSA Advisor na Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie, em São Paulo. Nós hoje estamos com mais um dos eventos da International Education Week. A International Education Week, então, é uma semana de celebração da educação nos Estados Unidos e todos os meses de novembro acabam se tornando, então, no Brasil, o mês da International Education Week. Esse webinar com o George Washington University é um dos eventos relacionados, então, a essa celebração anual. Bem, como disse, meu nome é Davi Medeiros, né? Eu estou aqui, então, no escritório do Mackenzie. Nós sempre orientamos os alunos através da nossa rede para a admissão dos programas de graduação, para mestrado, doutorado. Então, tem vários eventos como esses acontecendo, né? Vocês podem checar na nossa agenda de eventos, que depois nós vamos deixar o link aqui no chat para vocês. Vocês têm também muitos recursos da rede, como o Essay Writing Resource Center e outros, para que vocês possam entender o passo a passo para a aplicação para os programas nos Estados Unidos, né, para os programas acadêmicos. Para mim é uma grande honra, né, como EducationUSA Advisor, poder receber a Kate Kumar, que vai falar hoje com vocês, então, sobre a aplicação para Graduate School, sobre a questão de scholarships, inclusive dessa bolsa específica para brasileiros, né, para os programas aí de pós-graduação. Então, Kate, thank you very much for being here with us. And so the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, David. And thank you also to Raphael for setting up this webinar. I'm very excited to be here with you guys today. Thank you for joining the session. So my name is Kate Kumar. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Recruitment within the George Washington University. I represent our School of Arts and Sciences specifically, so I'll get more into that in a bit. But today I'm going to be talking about applying to graduate school. And because my perspective is coming from the George Washington University, some things are going to be specific to applying to GW, but I'm thinking, or when I created this presentation, I tried to make some tips and talk about things that you could apply to when you're applying to other graduate schools, not only GW. Of course, we're also going to be talking about a special scholarship opportunity that you're eligible for if you're a citizen of Brazil. So, I just want to note that that scholarship opportunity would be very specific to the George Washington University, not only to GW, but also to the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. So I just wanted to point that out, before we get started. So, okay, let's see if my slides will advance. Okay, so I'll just talk about the agenda briefly before we dive in. So first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do, and what graduate programs we offer. The next thing is that we're really going to get into the nuts and bolts about the application process, and I'm going to advise you on some tips and best practices when you are applying to graduate school. Then the next thing we're going to be talking about is that scholarship for Brazilian citizens. So, you'll definitely want to stay tuned for that part. So, don't leave too early. And then the next thing we're going to be talking about is some graduate school myths or misconceptions, maybe some things that you've heard about applying to graduate school that may not be quite true. And then finally, at the end, we will be opening the floor to question and answer. So what that will look like is probably we can just look in the chat. You can type your questions in the chat. We can probably allow you to unmute your microphone and ask aloud. So yeah, so just if you have any questions that pop up through your mind, I'll probably wait to the end to address them, but feel free, you can go ahead and chat those as they come to your mind. Okay, so just to orient you a little bit, the George Washington University is comprised of 10 different schools within GW. So we do have a business school, we have an education school, we have an engineering and applied sciences school, public health school. We actually have a lot to offer, but I'm specifically representing the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. And I'll call that, you'll hear me call that as CCAS. That's the acronym we call it. So CCAS, or Columbian College, I'll say. Okay. So GW is a private research university. We are kind of medium-sized. We are an urban campus located in the heart of Washington, DC, right downtown in Washington, DC, which is the capital of the United States. And when I say we're downtown, we are within walking distance of things like the White House, the State Department, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the Smithsonian Institution is there as well. So lots of things going on in our direct neighborhood. And our students do like to come here to take advantage of those kinds of internship opportunities and even job opportunities that may exist in the DC area. We also do have a few campuses in the neighboring state of Virginia, which is just one metro stop away. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Just a fun fact, GW actually has more graduate students than undergraduate students, about 15,000 graduate students, in fact. And within CCAS, we have about 3,000 of those graduate students. And we have a pretty significant size international student population at around 30%. Okay, so within CCAS, we offer over 90 different graduate programs. And those are including graduate certificates, master's level degrees, PhD, and a Doctor of Psychology. So one thing I want to note is that with the student F1 visa, typically those don't cover graduate certificates. So you'd generally be wanting to look at our master's and PhD programs. Although I will say once you're in a master's or PhD program, the nice bit of flexibility there is that you can often add a graduate certificate if you're interested. For example, if you're a physics PhD, you can add a data science graduate certificate. So that's kind of a fun thing to highlight. Our main campus is on Foggy Bottom, which is downtown DC, but we also do have some nearby campuses in Virginia. So that's just something you'll want to keep in mind when you're looking at programs. Make sure you see where it's located, because once you see where your program is located, you might want to base your housing around that location. Most of our programs are offered on a full-time and or part-time basis, and then they do offer day and or evening classes. And those last two bullet points are really just to highlight that, we want to offer that flexibility to our students who are often working at an internship or maybe a part-time job or even a full-time job during the daytime, and then they'll attend classes in the evening. So we do offer some flexibility there. Okay, so as I mentioned, we do have over 90 different graduate programs. So I'm not going to go over each and every single one of them, but they all can be broadly categorized within these areas of study. We do have several STEM designated programs, including physics, biological sciences, chemistry, mathematics, data science, statistics, and so forth and so forth. So on your own time, I definitely encourage you to look at all of the different programs we offer, because I'm sure with over 90 different programs, there's something that might interest you there. Okay, so now we are going to be talking about the actual application process, and then also tips and best practices that you can apply to that. Okay, so before you even start your application, you really need to do quite a bit of research. These are the 4 questions that you can ask yourself when looking at graduate programs and graduate schools. So which program or programs are you interested in? Graduate schools are very diverse from one university to another. And not only that, but even the programs from one to another, they can be diverse as well. For instance, at GW, we have 3 different data related programs. We have a master's in data science, we have a master's in data analytics, and a master's in business analytics. So it's like, while they're similar, you're going to want to, look at the department's website, look at the curriculum, the courses that you're taking, look at the kind of, research projects that you could be engaging in, look at the faculty profiles, make sure that you're finding which program fits you the best. And then I put down programs, plural, because, you are welcome to apply to more than one program. Just keep in mind that that means each program you apply to, that's going to be another application fee typically. So just keep that in mind. And then next, you're going to want to look at what are the program requirements. So even program application requirements can vary from one program to the next, even within the same school, even within CCAS, they can be different. Some programs might require the GRE and some might not. Some might require a writing sample and others might not. So that's just a very basic thing that you want to first find out all of the program requirements for the particular program you're applying to. The third thing that you want to ask is, when is the application deadline? Even within CCAS, we have several different application deadlines. For our PhD programs, we have the December 1st deadline coming up pretty soon. With our master's programs, those you'll actually see 2 application deadlines for our master's programs. One being the priority deadline by which to be considered for funding, and then one's going to be the final deadline. So there's a lot of different deadline possibilities. That's the first thing, one of the first things you need to research. And then the fourth point I wanted to mention is that, and this kind of goes along with number 3, is that you're going to want to research what are the funding options and processes. So often, well, not often, but every time when we are making an admission decision, we are also giving you at that same time your funding decision. So applying to a program and applying for funding, that usually goes hand in hand at the same time. So it's not something where you would apply to a program first, see if you get admitted, and then think about funding. You really have to do that at the same time. Okay. All right, so this is just a screenshot, and I know it's probably a little small to see, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like. This is our graduate program finder, which is the #1 tool you should use when you're looking up the application requirements for programs within GW. So there's the URL right there. And I'll also mention, you don't have to hurry to write down URLs. I'm going to have a slide at the end, which has all the URLs listed. So don't feel like you have to write it down now. So here you can filter by using the side toolbar based on academic area, academic level, and school to find, the right programs that kind of fit your criteria. So for instance, if you're wanting to see, which programs within Columbian College, you would select Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, graduate, so forth and so forth. Okay, probably the biggest tip that I can tell you is to allow plenty of time to apply. So when we talk about the application deadline, that means that's the deadline by which your application should be complete, not just submitted. So you can actually submit your application without having in your test scores and letters of recommendation, but by the deadline, it needs to have every single application component in. Otherwise, our admissions team won't send your application through to the department for review. So just keep that in mind. So once you find out the deadline, then you can work backwards from there. You should try to submit early if you can. As a rule of thumb, we recommend you to submit your application at least 2 weeks prior to the application deadline. And that allows for some time for any straggling, letters of recommendation or test scores. And not only that, but say, for instance, if you think that you've made a mistake on your application, like maybe you have a typo in your resume or your statement of purpose that you want to address, if you email our admissions team with 2 weeks in advance or so, then we have plenty of time to reach out to you and try to troubleshoot that and resolve the issue right then and there. If you don't submit until the application deadline, you realize you have a mistake, we might not have as much time to help you on that day, especially considering we have just a handful of staff members that are processing anywhere between 7,000 to 8,000 applications. So it's better for you to submit earlier. It's better for us for you to submit early. So we are really, we want to help you ensure that you have a complete application, but we just need to give each other enough time to do that. Okay, and this last point is just, and I mentioned this before, is submitting early means you can monitor your recommendations and official test scores. So when you, with your letters of recommendations, just keep in mind, those actually have to come directly from your references. So once you tell your references you need their letter, it's kind of out of your hand getting those in. You can remind them as much as possible, but ultimately it's up to them to actually send the letters. And then with official test scores like GRE or TOEFL or IELTS, those do take about 2 to 3 weeks to arrive. So, you'd probably want to schedule that at least a month in advance of the deadline or so. Those two things are really the most at risk for late arrival. And that's what we see hangs up our applicants the most. So just keep this in mind. Okay, so we've talked about, application requirements do vary program to program, but this is a list of the standard application requirements, and you can expect to see some version of this list required of you for whatever program you're interested in. We just want to point out that our application process uses a holistic review process. So we're not just looking at one thing within this list, we're looking at everything. Say if you have a few bad grades here or there, that's not going to automatically rule you out from the program. But on the flip side, if you have really good grades, that's not automatically going to get you admitted to a program. We really look at all of these pieces here. Just a small note, you'll see the application fee waived, and that is actually hinting to what I'm going to talk about with the scholarship, is that you get an application fee waiver for being eligible for that scholarship. So yay, that's great. It saves you $80 up front. Okay, so the application is 100% online, which is probably, you're probably aware of that. That's probably common nowadays. You will make an online account in your application portal, set up using your email, and you'll create a password and all that, and you'll log into that whenever you want to work on your application. Some of these bullet points are just kind of technical tips for when you're actually in the application portal working. We don't have to go over them now, but I'm happy to send the slide deck and you can reference this whenever you're working on the application. For your resume or your CV, the number one thing here to do is to proofread. That's super important. First, I would recommend is placing your academic history, your education, as well as any academic works you have, like peer-reviewed papers or published papers, anything like that. And then we also asked a few program directors and departments any tips that they could give. They said to avoid using any acronyms or abbreviations. So when in doubt, spell it out. What might mean something to you could mean something different to someone else. So just be sure to spell out things rather than use abbreviations. Of course, the resume should have a clean layout, and I can recommend you to download a template from online that you can insert your content into the template. You should include all experience you have, like work experience, and especially if you're interested in becoming, say, a teaching assistant or graduate assistant, definitely mention any kind of teaching experience you have, or research experience, or tutoring or mentor experience, anything like that. Then I just wanted to say that it is recommended to have at least maybe one person to review your resume, just at least looking for any spelling or grammatical errors, and just to make sure that it does have that clean layout that we're looking for. Okay, with your statement of purpose, that's generally around 500 words. We're not counting the words, but I would make sure to write, to make sure it's at least around 15%, around that much. I would say make sure you're looking at the program requirements, because sometimes they do ask you specific questions to address in your statement of purpose. And so you want to make sure that you're addressing those questions. But if they don't have any specific questions, then I've listed some here that you can think about when you're writing your statement of purpose. So why do you want to study this program at GW? What do you add to this program? And then what do you plan to do with your degree once you graduate? You should try to customize your statement of purpose as much as possible. We understand that you are applying to maybe several other universities, but with your statement of purpose, one size does not fit all. So try to tailor it as much as possible to the exact program. Remember to address it to the George Washington University. You have to change out the university names when you're writing this. So again, just make sure it is specific as possible to the program and to the university. Okay, with your letters of recommendation, first thing you want to do is check how many are required. It's normally going to be 2 or 3 letters required. You want to give your references ample time to submit their letters of recommendation, because keep in mind that they could have other students asking them the same thing. You want to be helpful to your references when you email them asking. You can include your transcript, include your resume, include the program description that you're applying to, maybe even include a former paper that you've written in their class to remind you of the work that you've done. Just try to be as helpful as possible. Select the strongest possible recommenders. So this one here is really saying, don't worry so much about the title of the reference. We really want you to focus on picking references who can speak to your ability to succeed in the program. So who knows you the best? Let's see. And if you feel that you've been out, while we do generally recommend academic references, if you have been out of school for some time, like over 5 years or so, professional recommendations are acceptable as well. Just I would make sure that they are from supervisors or someone managing you rather than from peers. Okay, so for transcripts, we do require transcripts from all institutions attended. So even whether or not credit was earned. So the first point that I'll go over is GPA calculation. So your transcripts might not be on the American 4.0 scale, but that's okay. Our admissions team is educated on calculating GPAs from other countries, so we handle that. If your transcript has a legend, then include the legend in the transcript. The next bullet point goes over unofficial versus official transcripts. So when you're applying, we actually don't need official transcripts. That's only if you're admitted. At that time, are we going to ask for official transcripts? So with unofficial transcripts, we do have a preferred format for how we like to receive those. If you obtain an official transcript from your registrar's office, that's what I recommend to do, is first getting an official transcript from your registrar's office and then scanning that transcript It should be as a PDF. It should be legible, of course. It should show your name, institution name, the degree that you're pursuing, ideally. Make sure it's not encrypted or locked. It should be in English. If not in English, you would need to get a certified English translation, rather through something like WEST or ECE. And we also like to see in progress coursework. We understand if you're applying during the middle of the semester that we won't see your grades in those courses, but we still would like to see which courses you're taking in that semester. And just a reminder to everyone, I'm hearing some background noise, so just make sure you turn your microphones on mute. Thank you. Okay, now we'll talk about official test scores from standardized tests that we might require. So for the Gpa general test, still hearing some background noise.
Uma vez, mas eu pensei que o Rodrigo tivesse na conversa e era eu.
Kate, I'm just trying to identify who is in.
No problem. I was too, but yeah, it's okay.
Yes, but, I think I just saw it. Okay, so solved. Great.
Solved. Okay, awesome. Thank you, David. So with test scores, as I mentioned, some of our programs do require the GRE, but not all programs require the GRE. I will say off the top of my head, just thinking about data science does not require the GRE, so that's pretty cool. But if you are already taking the GRE because maybe you're applying to other programs that require it, you're always welcome to submit your GRE scores if you feel that they're pretty good scores and can supplement your application. So you're always welcome to do that. Of course, we will need some proof of English language proficiency demonstrated through either the TOEFL, the IELTS, Duolingo, or PTE, which you can find more information on those tests on our website. For master's programs, we're typically looking for an 80 minimum from the TOEFL, and for IELTS is usually around a 6.0, no less than a 6.0. And I also wanted to mention as well with the GRE, I often get asked the question, do you have a minimum score cutoff? And the answer is no, we don't have minimum score requirements for the GRE. So this I kind of mentioned before, but because it takes scores around 2 to 3 weeks to arrive, you want to schedule an exam at least 1 month before the deadline. So just keep that in mind. And then all scores are sent electronically to the institution code is 5246, which I know we're getting technical here. That's just for GW. So it will be different for another university that you're applying to. But then just keep in mind that scores do expire. So for GRE, the scores are valid for 5 years, and for English language scores are valid for 2 years. Okay, so your writing sample, this is often a requirement more so for PhD programs. So it's not for all programs, but you would see it, especially I think if you're applying to political science has a requirement for this. But this is normally an example pulled from one of your academic writings from your undergraduate studies. It's normally in between 5 to 10 pages, but the one for political science I know asks for 30 pages. But this should be something that you don't have to create for the application, as it should be an excerpt pulled from a longer paper that you submitted previously in undergraduate. It's really just to show the admissions committee how well your academic writing is. And for the portfolio, this is really only required of our arts and design programs, such as fine arts or museum studies, things like that. So I won't go in too much detail there, but you could be asked for a portfolio if you're interested in those programs. And then I just wanted to talk about some etiquette in terms of when you email or reach out to faculty and an admissions office. it's totally fine to do so. We encourage you to reach out and to ask your questions. And the way that you're going to get the best response from us is if you provide your full name as it appears on your passport and your application. If you have an in-progress application, provide us with the name of the program you're applying to, of course, and then clearly state your question. The last bullet point I think is very important to mention because we have several email requests from interested prospective students who've not yet applied, but they'd like us to sort of pre-screen their profile. We don't offer that, unfortunately. So the only way that we can evaluate you is if you apply formally. It's okay to send a brief email asking or saying, I'm interested in these things. Do you think, this program would fit me? But, don't send us an email with your transcript, statement of purpose, all the application components attached, asking, would you get in or not? So we don't provide that. Okay, so the next thing that I'll get into, and probably the biggest thing for this webinar that might be of most interest to you, is a special scholarship opportunity for citizens of Brazil. So the scholarship is called the Global Leaders Fellowship. It has been, I think, active for around 6 years or now that we've had it. It is really just to increase diversity with our student population. So we have about 13 different countries that are eligible for this scholarship, and Brazil is one of those countries. So with this award, up front, you do get an application fee waiver. So that's great. You can apply to one of CCAS's programs for free. When you're applying, all you need to do is write in the box that you're an applicant from one of the global leaders countries, and we will waive the application fee for you. It should be a pretty automatic process. And then once you apply and you're admitted, you could receive a tuition award of up to $10,000 per academic year. So that's a renewable tuition award. And then to qualify, you just have to be a citizen of Brazil. You need to be studying on an F1 visa, which is the most common student visa. And then you have to be admitted to and enroll in one of our master's programs. So this should be highlighted as, it's not eligible for PhD programs. However, I will say if you're interested in our PhD programs and you apply and you're admitted, that funding is typically going to exceed the amount that you would get with this scholarship, as our PhD funding is quite comprehensive. So either way, it's a win-win. You just, this next bullet point is really important, actually. You have to complete and submit your application by February 1st. That is the priority deadline for most of our master's programs. And if one of our master's programs has a deadline that comes earlier, then of course you would need to submit it earlier at that deadline, but it's usually February 1st for all of them. This is really going to be the way to be considered because you don't have to do anything else. You just have to get in a completed application. And then the last bullet point, I've just included the link to the Global Leaders Fellowship webpage where you could read about it. And that link is going to be on our last slide as well. Okay, so how do you so we talked about eligibility. So how do you indicate that you want to be considered for this funding? So again, it's just submitting your complete application, but within the application, there's going to be a question that asks if you want to be considered for school-based fellowships or scholarships or assistantships, and you just check yes. There's usually never a reason why you would check no for this. So just remember, check yes to this question and we will consider you for this award. So it's very easy and simple. Okay, so now that we've talked about the scholarship and how much it is or covers, I want to give you an idea of our graduate tuition structure. So here, graduate tuition is charged per credit hour, and the tuition rate can vary by program and the program's location based on which campus it is. and we'll go over that. I'll show you the tuition chart in just a second. Actually, right now, let's go there now. Okay, so you can see that most of our programs have a rate of $18.25 per credit hour. And if your master's program is 30 credit hours, you would multiply it by 30 to get the total tuition amount of the program. Here, it breaks it down by 18 credits would be how much you can expect to pay per year. The programs listed underneath are the ones that have a slightly different rate. It's usually because they have a different program location, but most of them are going to be at that $18.25 rate. At least for this year, they might change slightly year to year, but usually not by too much. And this chart is also on our website in the section that says tuition and fees. Okay, let's see. So now I am going to talk about some graduate school myths and misconceptions. So the first one says that you shouldn't apply to graduate school right after undergrad, or you shouldn't wait too long after undergraduate to apply to graduate school. Well, that's false. The truth is we get a wide variety of applicants from all different stages in their life. So we get several students who are applying straight out of undergraduate, but then we also get several students who have been out of school for maybe 5, 10, or 15 years. So it's just really up to you. Let's see, the third one is application deadline is the date when I should submit. So we've already gone over that. You should not submit on the application deadline. You should submit before the deadline, at least 2 weeks in advance, and you should make sure your application is complete by the application deadline. Okay, the next myth is says graduate school is too expensive. Well, that one is not a myth. That one is true. So there's no way around this. I want to be transparent with you. It is quite expensive, but that's why I'm excited to share with you about this, very exclusive scholarship opportunity. It is a significant chunk out of your tuition. It's usually, I think when you calculate it, it's about a 30 to 35% tuition discount. So it's pretty significant, but yeah, there's no way around that one, unfortunately. Okay, the next one says decisions are based on a single item in an application. And again, that one is false. We review applications based on a holistic process. So just keep that in mind. And again, like we don't have GRE minimums, that kind of speaks to that. So just keep that in mind when you are thinking about your statement of purpose and your letters of recommendation. You really want to make those as strong as possible. Let's see, applicants who contact faculty directly have a greater chance of being admitted. Well, not necessarily. So for some of our PhD programs, the application requirements will ask that you have identified a faculty mentor when you're applying. So definitely follow that rule if it's asked of that. But for our master's programs, you typically don't need to identify or have talked with any faculty when you're applying. You can, if you wish, using some of those etiquette tips that I talked about earlier. But what I actually recommend you to do is if you have a question, I would first send your question to our admissions team. And our admissions team, if we can't answer your question, we might then forward it to the faculty member or to the department for them to respond to. So we're kind of helping you to use a little bit of discretion about, when we can help answer questions and when it's more appropriate for a faculty member or department. The last one says a recommender's title is more important than his or her knowledge of the applicant's academic strengths and professional skills. And again, I touched on this briefly, but that one is false. The recommender's title does not matter as much as how well they know you and how well they can speak to your ability to succeed in this graduate program. Okay. Let's see. I think we're getting to the end here. These are some helpful links and some contact information that you can feel free to take a screenshot or, copy these links. We've also, some of these links include just going, finding our application requirements. I've got the one that says sessions is a link to all of our information sessions that are coming up. The CCASGI is the global leaders link. So, and then I've listed our admissions team email down there is askccas@gwu.edu. They can help you whenever you're starting out in the application process and you have questions. They can help you with all your questions there. And then my name, of course, Kate Kumar, and I can be reached at gradccas@gwu.edu. And I'm happy to take any of your questions that you think of after this. Happy to send you the slide deck if you'd like, that sort of thing. So feel free to stay in touch. And then now I will be taking questions. So let me go back to the slides so that you can jot these links down. And let's see. So like I said, you can drop any of your questions in the chat, and let's see if we have any coming in.
Yes, we do. And thank you very much for this amazing presentation. There's some important information that you're bringing to all of them in terms of the application for graduate programs. One of the major doubts, questions they usually have are about how to approach professors, for example, and so many other things that you cover in your presentation. Thank you very much for that, Kate. And
yeah.
Well, yes, we do have some questions here. Would you like me to read them for you?
I'll try to read some off that I see that I can answer. Some of these questions I might not be able to answer right in a second. I might have to talk with my colleagues or get back to you. So I'll try to answer the ones that I can answer right in this moment. Let's see, when I say TOEFL, do I mean IBT? Yes, I believe that is the same thing. Yes.
Yes, usually it is the case for the TOEFL that when you're applying to an American university, you consider the TOEFL IBT.
IBT, yeah.
Yes.
The next one is about the scholarship. So it says $10,000 in tuition per year covers approximately how much of the total cost of an average master's program. So an average master's program could be 30 credit hours. So if you multiply that by the program rate, it's going to give you about $55,000 total for cost of tuition for your program. So then you can subtract 20,000 from 55,000 to give you an approximate estimate there. Of course, some of our master's programs are a little bit, have more credit hours, like maybe 36 credit hours, or our policy programs are 40 credit hours, but several of them, like our data science program, is 30 credit hours. So you just have to do a little bit of math to kind of calculate the costs. There's no age limit, of course, just as long as you've completed your undergraduate degree. Let's see. We do have a nursing program within GW. So it's not one of the schools that I represent, but we do have a nursing program. Full ride scholarship. So generally anything that looks like a full ride scholarship would be more reserved for our PhD applicants. Those are usually, if you get what looks like a full ride, it's going to be a comprehensive package that includes a stipend for living expenses and a tuition award to cover tuition costs. And then you're also going to get a salary for your work, either as, say, a teaching assistant or a research assistant, something like that. So there's sort of 3 components there that provide a really comprehensive funding package for our PhD programs. But at the master's level, there's usually not like a full ride scholarship. Let's see. So if you are graduating in December 2022 and they're asking when should you apply, well, it depends. If you want to enroll by that next fall, then you should apply by February 1st. So it just depends if you want to take some time off in the middle or if you just want to keep going. Remember that February 1st deadline is very important because that is our priority deadline to be considered for funding. So you definitely don't want to miss out on that. And I will say we do have programs that offer a start in the spring semester. So you're starting in January, but most of our funding is reserved for students enrolling in the fall. Okay, now this question asks about, does GW provide housing for master's or PhD students? This is a good question, very important. So because we are an urban campus, we don't have housing for graduate students. That's usually for our undergraduate students. But most of our students are able to find an apartment, whether it's nearby campus in DC, but many of our students actually go to the neighboring states of either Virginia or Maryland to find housing because it's a little bit more affordable out there. And we also have an extensive metro system that goes out to these states. One of the great things is you don't need a car. You can take the metro. And again, I would recommend looking at apartments that are more in Virginia and Maryland, just because those tend to be a little bit more affordable. Let's see. And David, if you're seeing any good questions that I might be missing, let me know.
There is one in Portuguese. When you want me to do it, I can translate it to you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So in this terms, this question is about the scholarship itself for Brazilians. The question here is if it is allowed for people who is in Brazil, who are residents here. But in this case, I understand it's going to be for Brazilian citizens, right?
That's correct. So you have to be a citizen of Brazil. Again, we do have 13 different countries that are eligible. So take a look at that list and you might fall into one of those countries, but it is specific. You have to be a citizen, correct? Yep. And if you aren't eligible for this scholarship, we do have other master's scholarships that you could be eligible for that we consider all applicants. They're called our Dean's Awards, and they're normally ranging anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 as a one-time tuition award, which is based on the strength of your application. So don't think that you're totally out of luck. You could be still considered for a merit scholarship. One question I see asks, is it necessary to get a visa to apply, or can you get a visa after being approved to the program? So the way it works is that you apply to the program first and you get admitted, and then starts the visa process. And then we will, ask you for your I-20 documents and that sort of thing. So first, just worry about applying. And I think that's probably true for most universities, is that the visa process comes after you're admitted. Let's see.
May I add something on that, Kate?
Yeah, sure, David, thank you.
Yes, it's very important, guys, for you to know that the visa moment in the application is just at the end, okay? So to apply for a student visa, you need to have your registration done at the institution. So it won't be previously, okay? Previously, yeah. Sorry, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, one question asks, something that's very common in Brazil is for master's students to work as teaching assistants at their university. And is this something that's common in the US? Yes, it's quite common. These sort of positions, which we call teaching assistants, or graduate assistants or research assistants, they are managed within each department. So they're not managed within, Columbian College as a whole, but you would still be considered for these positions at the same time that you're being considered for admissions. So that's why I mentioned on your resume, if you have teaching experience and tutoring experience and research experience, mention that, because that's going to strengthen your consideration for one of these positions. And then if you don't get one of these positions right away, once you're admitted, generally the department maintains the list of these kinds of openings, and you can still, you're eligible to apply for them even after you're admitted, even after you're a student. So yes, that concept is the same here. So the master's program is full-time or part-time? Okay, so I did mention that it could be full-time or part-time, but now I'm thinking about you being an international student, and the F1 visa typically stipulates that you have to be studying on a full-time basis. So that is normally meaning that you have to take 9 credit hours per semester during fall and spring. So that's normally 3 credit hours. So I will just give the caveat there that being an international student, usually you do have to take a full-time course load. I'm not, let's see, do you accept Cambridge English Proficiency Certificate? I would email our admissions team. I'm not aware of that one. And I've worked in the admissions office for a while. So we might not, but it's always worth inquiring, but I'm not sure at this moment. Let's see. Any questions you're seeing, David, that I might have missed? Good ones.
I would just like to highlight something about the Cambridge, because when, for example, when we're applying to undergraduate programs, we know there are a few institutions that will accept the Cambridge exam, such as PTE, CPE, okay? But it's always important when we are making your list and taking the universities there, for you to go to the website, to the institution website, and see all the requirements they have. The information for the proficiency exams are there, okay?
Yeah.
But usually for graduate programs, the tests that they usually require are TOEFL, IELTS, and sometimes Duolingo as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, if you look at this this slide with the helpful links, the one that says international grad apps, that has all of the application requirements specifically for international applicants, and that will tell you all of the English language proficiency tests that we accept.
I think I'm gonna try to send this link on the chat. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Yeah,
Great.
that'd be great.
So I'll do it.
And so one person is asking, are there programs for teachers? We do have a graduate school of education and human development within, you know, it's one of our 10 schools within GW. So definitely check that out. But just keep in mind that this scholarship I'm mentioning might not apply to that program, but they may have other scholarship opportunities. So if you like the sound of GW, definitely look at those programs. And if anyone wants to even unmute their microphone and ask aloud, I think you're welcome to do that.
Yes, feel free to open your mic. Just remember that we are recording the session, okay? Or open your camera if you're okay with that. And also, if you want to bring the question in Portuguese, I can translate it to Kate.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Okay.
Sirley just dropped a question here.
Yes.
Can you see
They're
it?
an architect. Yes, this person is an architect and they have a chance to apply. There definitely is not an age limit. We, like I said, some of our applicants are straight out of undergrad, but some have been out of school for a long, long time. So it's definitely not an issue there. We welcome you to apply for sure. Just, you know, when thinking about your letters of recommendation, I know you might have been out of touch with your professors for some time. So you might need to look at more professional recommendations like supervisors or previous managers. Yeah. So GW has partnerships with any company for internships. So because of our strategic location in downtown DC, our students do have internships often with World Bank, IMF, the Smithsonian Institution for our museum studies students. I think we do have a partnership with the National Institutes of Health as well. So we do have many relationships with places in and around the DC area. And then this is also a good opportunity to talk about having internships as an international student. So when you arrive as an international student, Generally, for the first year, you cannot have an off-campus internship for the first year. But then for the second year, you can you can apply for curricular practical training, which is offered again through your F1 visa, which means you can take on an off-campus internship as long as it pertains to your field of study. So, you definitely have these internship opportunities available to you. And then even once you graduate, you can take advantage of optional practical training, which means you can stay in the United States for at least 1 year, working at a job that is connected to your field again. If you're in a STEM designated field like data science, then you get a STEM extension on your OPT. So that's usually means that you would get 3 years total to stay in the United States to have a job. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah,
Yes.
looking like all the questions are coming in, unless someone wants to ask aloud, of course, I'm happy to answer.
Yes.
And I've put my email address there if you'd like to reach out directly. I think this is, it's a good time because it's early November, and that means that technically, if you were all interested, you probably could apply by the February 1st deadline if you worked hard. And especially for programs that might not require the GRE, you could certainly apply. So I'd like to know if it's necessary to okay, this person would like to know if it's necessary to contact a program advisor before applying to the program. So that's actually, I think that's a misconception for our master's programs. You really don't have to have an advisor before you apply. Again, you're welcome to reach out to the department, to the program director if you'd like to. In fact, our program directors are very accustomed to taking questions from prospective students. That's part of their job as program directors. So you're welcome to reach out, but you certainly don't have to. Because some of our PhD programs will state that they do require you to establish a connection with a faculty member and mention that in your application. But for our master's programs, you really don't need to. This next one, am I familiar with the Brazilian technology level degree? I believe they're equivalent to associate's degree, but I could be mistaken. If so, are there any use for any programs in GW? So I think in order to be eligible to apply to one of our graduate programs, you would need to have the equivalent of a 4-year undergraduate degree. So if it's equivalent to an associate's degree, which is usually just 2 years at the undergraduate level, you would likely need to supplement that with another 2 years to meet that equivalency requirement. And David, you might be more familiar with that. I'm not familiar if the technology level degree would be equivalent to a 4-year bachelor's.
Actually, thank you for this question, Daniel. A technology level degree here, usually when you have it, we call it in Portuguese cursos tecnológicos or tecnólogos, right? And in this kind of course, they have a workload which is shorter than the other ones, right? Mm-hmm. And so, Daniel, in these terms, you usually you need to check with each institution you're applying to, but regularly you would need a bachelor degree, a 4-year bachelor degree to be able to be entitled to apply directly to for a graduate program, okay? But you need to check with all of them.
I sent the chat, Daniel, to email our admissions team, and they can actually go into a database to see if that equates to a 4-year bachelor's degree. I can't check it right off the top of my head, but they can double check for you.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, because in these terms, what we usually need when you're checking with the institution, you're gonna see, for example, the institution may require you some credits that you take some credits there, and so you're allowed to apply for graduate programs. But it always depends on the institutions, because there's no national regulation for education in the United States. Okay, so it's very much what the states determine, right, Kate? And also
yeah, that's true. I mean, for instance, we accept from India, their bachelor's is often a 3-year degree, and we accept that. We count that as an equivalent. So
That's
yeah,
great.
it's just a matter, we would need to double check on that, but definitely something to research before you start applying.
So we started the session a little later, right? And now we're reaching the 10 extra minutes that in which we started on. So Kate, thank you very much for being here with us. It was amazing, all the information you could bring, and so happy that all the questions that the students brought were so interesting, and hope, guys, that you had an amazing time just like I had here with all of you and Kate. Kate, would you like to say any final words?
Yeah, sure.
Make
Thank you,
announcement?
David, for hosting, and Raphael, of course, for setting this up and managing, you know, the technical issue earlier. Thank you all for attending. I hope that you've learned some valuable information, and just want to share with you that, you know, while grad school is expensive, you know, there are ways to combat that if you're really interested in a school. So keep us in mind. Keep the February 1st deadline in mind, and, you know, hope to maybe see your application. Stay in touch with me, whether it's my admissions team or whether it's me directly. I have my emails here. I hope that you stay in touch, and we will talk to you soon. So take care, everyone, and have a nice day.
Thank you, Kate. Bem, mais uma vez agradecendo a todos vocês, a todos e todas que estiveram aqui conosco em mais esse evento da International Education Week, do EducationUSA, da nossa rede EducationUSA. Participem dos próximos eventos que vão ocorrer em novembro com outras universidades. Vocês têm essas informações facilmente na nossa agenda de eventos, que está disponível no site educationusa.org.br. Sigam-nos também nas nossas mídias sociais aqui de São Paulo, EducationUSA SP, no Instagram, por exemplo. E vocês têm as informações, então, nas bios das nossas mídias sociais e também no site do EducationUSA Brasil. Esperamos, então, vocês nos próximos e até breve. Tchau.
Ciao.
Thank you, Kate. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. See you later.